Hello dear chess friends, I'm International Master Andrey Ostrovskiy and you're welcome to the series of lessons dedicated to the essentials of bishop endgames. In this lesson, we're going to discuss the main method of making a draw in the opposite colored bishop endgames. And this method is called a fortress. So the fortress is the specific position in which the strongest side, despite a great advantage, material one or positional one, can't make progress. So let's have a look in this position. We can see that black has two extra pawns. It is a great material advantage. Moreover, we can notice that the pawn structure favors black seriously because black has 4 pawns against 1 on the king side when white has an isolated passed pawn on the queen side, but this pawn doesn't really matter because black has a chance to blockade it at first glance easily, so that white can't make progress with that pawn. So actually everything will be connected to the king side where black has really 4 pawns against the 1, so a great advantage, and black's plan is pretty much understood. So the king goes towards the king side, and then gradually black starts pushing all his pawns towards promotion squares, and well, passive defense will be definitely insufficient for white. So we can notice an interesting feature in this position. So almost all black's pawns are placed on the same color with the bishop, right? So squares f6, g5, h4 are dark squares, the same as the squares that bishop b6 controls, because it is a dark squared bishop, of course. So actually only e6 pawn occupies a different square. So if we manage to force this pawn to occupy e5, it will be possible just to blockade everything on light squares, and it might be a fortress. So for this purpose, white just sacrifices the pawn c5. It is necessary to do this exactly right now because otherwise king simply goes to c7 and in time to protect e6 when it will be attacked. So bishop takes c5, bishop b3. Now we can see that there is no chance for black to protect this pawn with the king, so e5 is forced, after which white simply sets up a blockade on light squares. So bishop goes to e6 first, occupying very important diagonal, simply protecting the own h3 pawn, and also controlling squares of possible movement of opponent's pawns f6 and g5. And the rest is simple. So king c7, king goes to e4, completing the fortress. So king blockades e5 pawn. At the same time, this king controls f5 square, so that preventing black's f5 move. The bishop at the same time controls the same f5 square. This bishop controls g4 square, which is also controlled by pawn h3. And the own pawn h3 is already protected. So black has nothing even to try to change in this position, because both squares of possible potential movement of pawns, they are f5 and g4, are controlled twice, so that the king will be not enough to support these pawns in their movement. So the king can only control both squares once, while they are already controlled twice, right? And the bishop c5 simply can't help because it controls squares of another color. And the pawn h3, which could be potential object of attack for black, is already protected, and it occupies light square, which is also very important, so that even if king gets closer to this h3 pawn, it's not possible to attack it twice. So no chances to change anything here for black, so it is a dead draw. So how to keep this position with white? Simply going back and forth with the bishop e6 along diagonal h3, c8. So it doesn't really matter which squares to occupy. They could be even g4 and f5 squares. So these squares are quite solid because these squares are already controlled by other white's pieces. And just to keep the king on e4. So that's it, the only condition. So now I think you understand better what does it mean to create a fortress in opposite colored bishop endgames. Let's have a look on other examples, a bit more complicated ones. In this position, we can see that white has, again, two extra pawns. They are not connected, which is usually quite good because it's possible to make opponent's defense harder. So in many cases, it is really hard to coordinate the work of the king and the bishop to stop both pawns. And, well, everything says that white has great chances to win this game. But we can notice a very interesting feature which distinguishes this position from those we discussed in previous lessons. So we can see that the bishop actually controls both pawns from one diagonal. It seriously helps, right? Because actually now there is no situation in which black's defense will be torn apart. Actually, what black needs is to control both squares c7 and f4. They are key squares here, with both the bishop and the king preventing the movement of either f pawn or c pawn. So at the moment we can notice that black already controls f4 twice, so it's not possible to make a progress with white. So white tries to get to the pawn c6, which is at the moment controlled by only the bishop. So king goes to f5 with a very simple plan. So if black does nothing here, then after king e6, king gets to d7 and the pawn simply being promoted, or white forces the bishop to sacrifice himself, and white easily wins with the extra bishop and the pawn. So after king f5, black also has to move his king, and king goes to d4. It is possible to give up a control over f4 square in this concrete situation, because if white plays f4, then king simply goes back to e3, attacking f4 second time, and as we can see, king f5 simply blockades the own pawn so that this pawn drops. So black takes f4 pawn, next move with the bishop, and with a single extra pawn on the board, it's not possible to win the game. So after king d4, white continues his path to d7 square, king goes to e6, king goes to c5, attacking the pawn, king goes to d7, and black is just in time to stop the pawn. King goes to b6, and we can see that black does exactly the same, but now relating to c6 pawn, so controlling the square of a potential movement of this pawn twice with the bishop and the king. And now it is important to play accurately, because at first glance everything is clear so well. When the bishop and the king control c7 square, it looks like everything that black needs is just to keep the bishop on this diagonal and it will be a simple draw. But it's not that simple. So white plays bishop e8, actually making a waiting move, trying to force a Zugzwang situation. And, well, in some cases, it is possible to lose the game with black. For instance, if bishop goes to e5, possible move, why not to make it? This gives white a very important tempo, after which white wins. So king e6, attacking the bishop, and after the bishop goes away, king f5, king c5, f4, and that's it. After king d4, as you can see, king goes to g5, and now pawn f4 starts moving. And we will receive a famous pattern with two pawns that are placed far from each other. They are not connected, so it is usually an easy win for the strongest side. So black failed to get to e3 square in time with the king because of occupying e5 square with the bishop, which gave white very important tempo. What happens after bishop h2? Here it looks like, wow, the bishop is far, far away and the king can't really attack it. That's true, but the problem with this position is that after king e6, king c5, king f5, king d4, white plays f4. And this breaks the connection of the bishop to c7 square. And again, king e3, of course, helps black to win the f4 pawn, but it doesn't matter because white plays c7 and promotes next move. So after bishop e8, it is necessary to stay with the bishop on this diagonal, that's true, but not to occupy this bad squares like e5, g3, h2, f4. So in those cases, white's win is clear. So bishop c7 is the move because here the bishop gives white's king no tempi. At the same time, there is no chance to break the connection between this bishop and c7 square. So, of course, white can wait one move more, king c8, bishop d6, king d7, bishop c7, but, well, nothing really changes. And if king goes back to ensure the movement of the f-pawn, then black's king also goes back and gets there just in time to stop it. And that is the fortress. So here we can see a mechanism of the fortress. So if in the previous example the king remained on the same square and only the bishop moved along light squares, so here it is different. So both pieces, the bishop and the king, take part, so both make some moves, and well, the mechanism requires very accurate play, but it is exactly what usually demands the fortress. So accurate play and very concrete sharing the defense between the bishop and the king. So you have to understand what your opponent wants to do, and you have to coordinate the work of the king and the bishop accurately and precisely. That is the point here. Let's have a look on the other example. Having the knowledge from previous lessons, we could have thought that, well, white should easily win here. And true, white definitely has great chances to win this position, but black manages to create a very smart fortress. And this example is definitely a complex one, and it is very useful to follow the way black plays here. So first of all, black actually coordinates the work of the bishop and the king, understands white's main plans, main ideas of winning the game, and prevents the worst. So king goes to d7 first, king c3, and king e6. As we can see, with the help of this maneuver, black's king managed to close the way of white's king to the weakness on g6. It is very important because in that case, it could have been possible to tear the defense of black's bishop apart. So if bishop protects this pawn from d3 square, let's say, at some point it will be possible, let's say, to play a6, forcing the bishop to take that pawn, and then this pawn drops, and well, it will be much harder for black to keep this position. So king goes to e6 just to prevent the march of the king to g6 pawn. But at the same time, black, of course, gives white a chance to get to the b6 square, which at first looks very, very annoying. In fact, black already prevented the worst, and black is ready to mate this way of the king to b6 with the fortress. So king goes to d4, bishop goes to b7, king goes to c5. Now there is no longer a threat of getting to g6 square, so king goes back to d7 square. White continues with the king b6, which is quite natural. So white does everything according to the typical plan of winning such a position. So to get to the pawn, which is stopped by the bishop. So bishop goes to f3. Bishop remains on this long diagonal, controlling the square of the promotion. a6, and king goes to c8. Very, very important move. Because if bishop goes to g2 or any other move on this diagonal, white is just winning after king a7. So white is just in time to perform the breakthrough. King c8, d7, king d7, and king b8. So here we can notice that the existence of the pawn g5 and pawn g6 actually makes a great difference if compared to the pattern that we discussed in previous lessons when white had only 2 pawns on the board. So in such a situation, it is possible to sacrifice one of them and then to ensure the promotion of another one, to force the opponent to sacrifice a bishop, and the rest is simple. So white simply wins, having one more pawn on the other side. So after a6, it is important to prevent white's breakthrough to b8 square with the king. That's why black just plays king c8 here. And after king a7, stops the d7, but appears it is very important to choose the correct square to do that. So there are 2 choices. They are bishop c6 and bishop g4, and only bishop g4 appears correct. Because if bishop c6, then it is a zugzwang after bishop b4. So just wait in a bit. King can't move because it gives white a chance to occupy b8. So bishop has to remain now on this diagonal a4, e8 to stop white's d7 move. And it appears that black is just not in time in this case. King goes to b6. Bishop should change the diagonal now because white already has its threat of a7 followed by a8. So bishop goes to f5 to be able to occupy e4 square. And now d7 just breaks black's defense, breaks black's fortress, because if bishop takes d7, then white easily wins after a7. And if king takes d7, then the king gets to b8, which was planned actually. So only bishop g4, very accurate play, helps black to keep this position. Now after king b6, the bishop goes to f3, and well, looks like white simply can't make a progress. All key squares are controlled. So after king c5, king d7, king d4, king goes to e6. As we can see, black is just in time to cover all the weaknesses. And if white plays d7, trying to break through, then king takes d7, and now it's easy. Again, a simple coordination of the bishop and the king, and well, it is quite easy to save the game. So bishop protects g6, and the king is ready to stop white's a6 pawn if necessary. So as you can see, creating a fortress sometimes requires really accurate play, a hard work of understanding what is going on, what opponent's plans are, and actually a great calculation. So everything is connected basically on the calculation. So as you can see, there are a lot of nuances, like after king a7, looks like both bishop c6 and bishop g4 are equal. So there is no difference, but only bishop g4 is possible because bishop c6 leads to a zugzwang. Thanks a lot for your attention. See you next lessons.